In light of another round of college football playoff expansion talks taking place this week, have we reached a point as college football fans where it's like, man, enough is enough? No, and it's not anywhere close. That and so much more to Tuesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Tuesday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning, every dayers. Coming up in segment number 3, I'm going to answer some of your questions, so do appreciate you guys being here, making this show what it is. Mailbag questions in segment 3, segments 1 and 2. A lengthy conversation on, it's an article out there by Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger, kind of talking about how representation of the SEC and the Big Ten, the college football playoff, athletic directors from all the Power 4 programs and Power 4 conferences in Notre Dame and Group of 5 representatives, talking again about college football playoff expansions. And it's been 1 year, and the playoffs went from 4 teams to 12 teams, which was needed, okay? That was needed. But some of these theories and some of these rumors that have turned into extreme talking points that's probably going to happen, some of those seem a bit far-fetched to me. So let's kind of go over that here in segments 1 and 2. And some of these ideas, man, I can't wait. Sign me up. I do want to start off by saying this, and I want to know if you guys are in agreement with me, right? _Cain at Locked On Vols. Please comment on this the show on YouTube. Did the 12-team college football playoff this year devalue the regular season? So, like, coming into the year, I was under the impression that, you know, 4 teams probably aren't deserving even to make the dance to begin with. Why are you expanding to 12 teams? Not all 12 teams are capable of winning a college football playoff, and certainly you can argue that from this year. I mean, Tennessee included, those first-round games were a bludgeoning, right? However, man, nothing about the 12-team college football playoff era so far, one season, has diminished the regular season for me. In fact, I think this has been the best regular season in recent memory. I've had a ball, right? And we've talked about this some before. There was no true, clear-cut number 1 team in the country, no dog. I mean, you could say it was Oregon, but, you know, it was Alabama was up there a little bit. Texas was up there a little bit. Georgia was up there a little bit. Ohio State was up there a little bit, so on and so forth. But it really made things out to be where in this first running of the 12-team college football playoff era, you had the, 7th seed beating the 5th seed or whatever it was. I mean, 2 teams that would not have had an opportunity to play in the college football playoffs to begin with competed for a national championship. So number 1, I thought that was awesome. Number 2, you get more teams in the dance, more teams that have a shot. I think that's awesome. But overall, I just think that it made the regular season from really the end of, you know, about midway through October, man, it got real, right? I mean, sure, there were some early season wins where you could say, ooh, that's a college football playoff resume booster right there. Oh, yeah. But when you got to towards the end of October and certainly the whole month of November, it was, ooh, this is a college football playoff elimination. Or what you thought was a college football playoff eliminator was not, because another team dropped the next week, right? I mean, it was so much fun. We were watching our team, and we were scoreboard watching, around the SEC or around other, big-time matchups in college football. So it was an absolute blast for me. So I'm for the 12th team. Now, do you need more than 12? Do you need 14 or 16? I mean, at this point, it's a money grab, and that's all it is. I mean, that's all you, like, anybody saying, oh, yeah, give me more. I mean, sure, more teams have an opportunity, but what's the difference in 12 to 14, 14 to 16? You're looking 2 to 4 more teams. I mean, it's just at that point, it's only a money grab by the SEC and the Big Ten. So I think that is where fans are getting super fed up with just how it is. And you couple that into where to watch college football and baseball, college baseball is another situation, but to watch college football and sometimes even the NFL, now you got to have a million different streaming services. Got to have Amazon Prime, got to have Peacock, got to have Netflix, all this type of stuff. I mean, that's the NFL mostly, but even a little bit in college football. And so I understand the from the fan outrage, just like, come on, like, let's draw the line somewhere. And if it's not there, it might be this. So again, the SEC and the Big Ten, and Ross Dellinger does a great job of breaking this down, a lengthy story over at yahoosports.com, breaking down the discussions that are being had, meetings that are being had between the SEC and the Big Ten and college football playoff representation this week. down in New Orleans. The SEC and the Big Ten hold sole discretion on the future college football playoff format starting in 2026, the beginning of the CFP's new 6-year television agreement with ESPN that runs through 2031. Why do they have all that ownership? Well, the SEC and the Big Ten pretty much threatened to leave. Before this new agreement, saying, hey, if we don't get what we want, we're the 2 richest teams. None of y'all could survive or would turn a whole lot of a hefty profit without us. So we're going to leave and do our own thing if we don't get a lot of control over what's going to happen in the next round of the college football playoffs. And so, the ACC, the Big 12, Notre Dame, a group of 5, the Big 12, reluctantly were like, okay, but you still got to take what we say into consideration, right? But they're like, okay. So the SEC and the Big 10 and Greg Sankey and all those people are like in control of this. So it won't happen for the 25 season. But it will start in 2026 again when this new agreement, this new contract goes underway with the television agreement with ESPN through 2031. It's either going to be 14 or 16 teams in the expansion. Again, none of this is official yet, but this is kind of what they're discussing this week. 14 college football playoffs or 16-team college football playoffs that would grant 4 automatic qualifiers from each of the SEC and the Big 10, 2 from the ACC and Big 12, 1 from the highest-ranked group of 5 champion. It includes 1 or 3 at-large spots, one of those intended for Notre Dame if it finishes ranked inside the top 14, which is a guarantee specifically designated for Notre Dame as part of the college football playoff agreement. So I think that's kind of what I have an issue with here. Like, there are some people like this, and I don't tell anybody how to fan, but if you sit here and root against Alabamas and the Floridas and the Georgias and the Ole Misses and so on and so forth, every Saturday, why are you trying to pound your chest and say SEC? Like, I understand it's kind of a prideful thing that you want to say, oh, well, Tennessee plays the best of the best every single week, which is true. Tennessee plays in the best conference, top to bottom, in college football. The last 2 years scheduled, this past year and the one coming up, one could argue the schedule's not been the toughest, but still, you're playing Florida, Georgia, Alabama every single year for the most part. But I'm not one that's going to go out on a limb and say, oh, the SEC deserves it. The SEC needs this, or the Big Ten needs this. So I do not like the 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and the Big Ten. What if one year the ACC has a big cycle up where 3 teams deserve to be in the college football playoff? At points in times this year, we were looking at SMU, Miami, Clemson was out on that brink as well. I mean, easily, the 3 teams could have been in the college football playoff from the ACC. What if that happens next year? They've only got 2 spots. Big 12 has only got 2 spots. I think that's where I would draw the line a little bit. Doesn't mean I'm not going to watch it. Doesn't mean I'm not going to follow it and cover it. But I'm not a fan if it does end up being this, which it looks like it will be, the 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and the Big Ten. This format would be described as, the 14 team would be described as a 4-4, 2-2-1 plus 1 model. Again, 4 from the SEC, 4 from the Big 10, 2 from the ACC, 2 from the Big 12, Notre Dame plus 1 G of 5. Which the top 2 seeds would receive a first-round bye. They would seed them 1 through 16, basically on the top 25 rankings from the college football playoff. The 16-team college football playoff, nobody would get byes, which I think is very, very interesting. Already there's certain agreed-upon guarantees of any future format, automatic inclusion of the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. Okay, that would stay the same. That was in place this past year. Protection for independent Notre Dame, that would stay in there. Of course, that was there this year. A field of at least 12 up to 14 or 16. So a lot of people are saying, well, it's not fair. The SEC, the Big Ten shouldn't have that much a piece of the pie. It's not fair. And I'm not for those conferences getting 4 automatic qualifiers. However, if you go back and look at the stats from the college football playoff era, okay, this article breaks that down here at Yahoo Sports as well. It backs that up. Since 2014, the start of the playoff, since the 2014 playoff, the SEC has had 52 teams ranked inside the top 14 of the CFP rankings heading into conference championship weekend, or about 4.7 teams per year. So that's spot on, right? 4.7. In fact, the SEC, by that rounding, would be getting 1 less team per the math. Hashtag math. The Big Ten has had 51 teams, which equates to 4.6. So per rounding, hashtag math, the Big Ten would also be getting one less based on the averages. The Big 12 is next at 23, which is 2.1. That's right, because they'd be getting 2 under this. The ACC at 20, 1.8. You round up, that's 2, so it's spot on for those leagues. Notre Dame at 0.45, okay, which is technically less than half, so you can't even round up right there. So Notre Dame is getting the benefit of the doubt because, of course, it's Notre Dame. And Group of 5 at 0.27, but again, we just want to include a Group of 5 because that's what we decided to do. The data also in this article takes into consideration conference realignment like Texas, Oklahoma, kind of toward the SEC figures, USC for the Big Ten, Stanford, ACC, so on and so forth. So the math backs it up a little bit. The SEC and the Big Ten are actually getting jobbed a little bit if this were to transpire per the math, because the math states since the last 11 years or 10 years or whatever it is, the SEC on average has had 5 teams that could be getting in under this model at 4.8 or 4.9 or whatever. So anyway, I'm still not necessarily for the SEC and the Big Ten getting automatic qualifiers of 4. I think that's probably too much because, again, I mean, sure, the SEC has been dominant for so long. The Big Ten has been dominant for a long time, but there will be some years where the Big 12 cycles up and the ACC cycles up, and there's going to be teams that are left out for maybe a team in the SEC or Big 10 that doesn't necessarily deserve it over said team in the Big 12 or the ACC. I don't know. So that's kind of one part of the equation. We're going to get into some fun talking about some scenarios that I do like from this article at Yahoo Sports that are being discussed right now, a part of the conference expansion conversation happening between SEC, Big Ten, college football playoff officials in New Orleans this week. Some really, really cool stuff. You don't want to miss out. I'll tell you all about it as we return right here on your Tuesday morning edition of Locked On Vols. This message is from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, taxes is easily uploaded from your forms to your TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back, guaranteed. All while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only on iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. So continuing to work through this Yahoo Sports article here from Ross Dellinger, basically, kind of breaking down what conversations are happening right now, because college football playoff expansion is coming again, not for the 25 season, but for 26 and beyond. Will it be 14 teams? Will it be 16 teams? How's all this going to work? Who's going to get the automatic qualifiers? All that and more. We'll find out when all these things are official at some point, but this is, were rumors early on or wishful thinkings early on have now turned into legitimate talking points at these meetings. Also part of these legitimate talking points at these meetings, part of, this agreement or whatever, the SEC and the Big Ten could be scheduling kickoff classic games, right? So instead of, Tennessee playing Syracuse or Tennessee playing Virginia or Tennessee, you have that that caveat in there for now that you have 4 non-conference games. You have to play at least one Power 4 opponent. I'll get into should the SEC play 9 games or not here in a moment. But in order to fill that caveat a little bit, the SEC and the Big Ten could do some type of challenge or kickoff classic or whatever, and you could sell that separately with a TV deal, but split it between ESPN and Fox or whatever, because Fox has some of the Big Ten games, and of course the SEC has, or ESPN has the SEC. Wouldn't that be cool? Talk about resume boosters. If you're already getting 4 automatic qualifiers, say a Georgia plays Michigan or a Tennessee plays Ohio State or Ole Miss plays Oregon or whatever it is, the team that loses, your season's far from over because, again, your league is still guaranteed 4 spots in the college football playoff. However, the team that wins, on the fast track throughout the rest of the season, a resume booster, and you're probably going to be ranked, if you're not already in the top 5, somewhere in those top 5. So an SEC Big Ten Challenge and or SEC Big Ten Kickoff Classic, I think would be a whole lot of fun. I would much rather do home and homes Tennessee, Oregon, Tennessee, Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio State, Tennessee, Wisconsin, then going to Georgia at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and taking on Syracuse. Going to Charlotte to First Bank Stadium, I think that's what it's called, to take on NC State. That just doesn't do it for me, right? But this would. I think that'd be really, really interesting. And that's talked about kind of as a part of this, what's this ever-evolving landscape. Also, because you get 4 automatic qualifiers into the dance, could the SEC finally go to a 9-game conference slate? The SEC is not going to go to a 9-game conference slate ever unless ESPN ponies up more money. That's why the SEC has simply not gone there to date. That's why we continue to kick the can down the road a little bit and say, oh, well, the 2024 schedule, let's just do the same exact schedule and flip the home and homes for 2025. We'll mix up the order to try to fool some people. No, it's the same thing. It's lazy. It's because they still don't know if, for the long-term future of the league, if the SEC is going to be 8 games or 9 games. Again, you guys know my stance on this. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me say it a million times. If you're not, here it is. You want to say that it just means more? You want to say you're the best of the best? Pound your chest. Say we're the SEC. Play 9 games. Big Ten does it. Play 9 games, right? Play 9 games. Would the SEC Big Ten clash or whatever suffice for? Is that a workaround so the SEC doesn't have to play 9 games, but you have to play in that every single year? That's essentially keeping the rule that's already in place where each SEC team has to play one Power 4 opponent non-con. But with all due respect, instead of the NC States and the Virginias and so on and so forth, you'll be playing, sure, you can play the Rutgers and the Northwesterns. I recognize there are some bad teams in the Big Ten too, but you're going to be playing somebody for the most part. But because you are guaranteed 4 spots under this simulation, I don't see what's holding you back. Go and do that SEC Big Ten Challenge or play 9 conference games, for crying out loud. Here's the most interesting thing I think from the piece. And again, Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, really, really good article, breaks it down in word a whole lot better than I'm doing it right now verbally. But a part of this is going to be like, well, if they go to 14 or 16, playoff teams, the timeline and all this, that won't be determined for a while now because they want to not be combating the NFL. Also, what do you do about conference championship games? This is probably my favorite little piece of info here from this story. Do you eradicate conference championship games? Because you don't necessarily need them, right? You're just going to take the rankings 1 through 14 or 1 through 16, and that's how you're going to be seeded. Okay? The top 2 seeds in a 14-team league would get buys. In a 16-team playoff, you wouldn't even get buys, according to this story. So the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is not going to have a whole lot of power, if you will, at the end of the day, or it's going to be stripped of some power that it has now, because you're not going to have it to be nail biting who's going to be that team 13, 14, 15. You're essentially going to be nail biting potentially what team is going to be 17, 18, 19. It's kind of taking some of the decision-making out of the hands of the College Football Playoff Committee. But nonetheless, however many teams there are, there's still going to be a gripe for the ones that were left out. But anyway, conference playoff championship games. You don't necessarily need those anymore because that doesn't mean that you're going to get an automatic or you're going to get a bye, right? So what was presented and what's being discussed potentially is, what about a play-in game? So the first Saturday in December, the first Saturday that follows the regular season, right? Say you have, let's go into this simulation here this year. Say the SEC this year had 4 teams that got in, right? So it was Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, or Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, whatever. That 4th team that got in, per the rankings, would have been Alabama. So those teams would have been in there. Those next 2 teams that were knocking on the door, South Carolina and Ole Miss. So under this simulation, instead of an SEC Conference Championship game on December 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever it is, it would be a play-in game for the college football playoffs. Who's going to be the the 4th seed for the I guess I did all this wrong. It would be following the model of, let's follow the model of this year. Yeah, this year actually works out perfectly, excuse me. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee were already in. But there was a conversation on, should it be Alabama or South Carolina? Okay? So under this, it would be Alabama playing South Carolina on the weekend of what would have been a conference championship, and instead of conference championship, it would essentially be the SEC college football playoff game right? It's like going to Dayton for a play-in game to the dance in March Madness. This year actually works out perfectly under the simulation because, again, it was the conversation, should it be Alabama or South Carolina? Neither one of them got in, but those two teams would have played for a spot in the CFP this year. Isn't that fun? Isn't that exciting? I think that's awesome. Awesome. Same thing for the ACC this year, right? Potentially. Not necessarily like the SEC, but I think that was incredible. I think that would be so much fun. Everybody would be watching that game, right? So you don't necessarily have a college or an SEC championship game anymore. You could have an SEC regular season championship crown, hang the banner, but put the year up there on the banner in the Food City Center. But you'd be having a play-in game. You win that game, there you go. You're in the college football playoff. If you lose that game, you're going to whatever bowl game you're assigned. I think that's fun. I think, from a TV rating standpoint, that would just be a home run. Because so many times it's like, well, I think Lane Kiffin even said it this year. It's like, what's the point in playing in the SEC championship game? If I'm in, sure, I don't get a bye, but, potentially I'm hosting a first-round game. What's the point? What's the value in playing in an SEC championship game for the loser, right? You're protected. You're probably still in, and that's how it worked this year, but in the SEC, and in the ACC, but you have you have the opportunity for your guys to get hurt, and you're not gaining anything. So I think this would just be an absolute dynamite of an idea right now. So anyway, I know I threw a whole lot of information at you. I kind of talked in circles a couple of times, but again, I don't think anything's going to be set in stone this week, but discussions are going on right now. The SEC and the Big Ten are driving the ship, riding the ship right now, and it's if they're going to expand to 14 teams or 16 teams, and the trickle-down effect. What's that do to conference championship games? What does that do for non-conference games on the schedule? What's that do for the SEC schedule? A lot of interesting stuff right here. I encourage you guys to go check it out over Yahoo Sports. But no ifs, ands, buts about it. The SEC and the Big Ten are calling the shots here. You as a fan, are you to the point now to where you say enough is enough? Because clearly I'm not. I get annoyed by some things, but college football is the best thing in the world, right? So for me, I still love it. I'm still engaged. I'm still all about it. Maybe some of you guys are different. Love to hear from you at _Cainer and at Locked On Vols. Okay, so great stuff there. Mailbag questions coming in. Really interesting question from Braden. If I could take an NFL Street, if I could create a Tennessee version of NFL Street, that old video game, right? Who would I pick to be on that team? I thought that was a really, really fun question. That's one of the questions we're going to lead into here as we continue on here on a Tuesday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Braden's got that question. We'll kick it off here, mailbag edition of the show. Braden says, if you were to build a team in the style of the old NFL Street video game, who would you choose? Players can be span across from all Tennessee football history, 7 guys to fill out your team. Anyone can play any position. Each guy must play offense and defense. I love this question because I used to play the NFL. I had a couple years in a row, I had the NFL Street video game, and it was so much fun. Vince Young was a baller on that game. Jeremy Shockey was a dude in that video game. So in my mind, and I remember I haven't played the game in years, but I remember the basics, like your quarterback is playing quarterback, he's also playing safety. And it's really kind of funny when you saw Eli Manning come down and drop the hit stick. It's kind of funny. And that's what made that video game so unique. But I tried to think of versatile players. Might have had some versatility here at Tennessee, but obviously versatile players, before they came into high school. And I'm not going to lie to you. I thought NFL first-round picks. So clearly I thought of some NFL first-round picks, some of the better players. And this is kind of recent modern history. This is not prior to the modern era or anything like that. I mean, we could go back and, Johnny Majors and so on and so forth. So many great players from back in the day. But here's what I came up with, okay? My quarterback, and maybe this is just for I want to win getting off the bus challenge, right? Like, I want to be like, oh, that other team seeing us get off the bus, like, oh, man, I'm scared. I mean, Joe Milton, right? I mean, like, can you go any different than Joe Milton? Yes, I have two other quarterbacks here that would be my alternates, but I think from a physicality standpoint, playing NFL Street, the video game, Tennessee version, I think Joe Milton, who is as big as a defensive end, and you're not necessarily airing it out, right, in NFL Street, it's a lot of physicality. So give me Joe Milton as my quarterback. Others that I thought in there, I think Heath Shuler would have been great in this video game. And then I also thought about Brent Schaefer. Let's dial it back to 2004. Eric Cain's Brent Schaefer. Brent Schaefer was a scrambler. He was a lefty. Just came to mind when I thought about this because I think his skill set would adapt really, really well in NFL Street football in this video game. But give me Joe Milton. I think that makes the most sense. Here's versatility. This is very recent. This is not an NFL draft pick. In fact, he was at UFA and didn't even last through OTAs, I think, or maybe rookie minicamp. Jeremy Banks. Jeremy Banks was a dog. He was mean. He played good linebacker. 15-yard penalties at least once every game. There are no 15-yard penalties in NFL Street, but also Jeremy Banks can play running back. His versatility of linebacker and running back, I love. Give me Jeremy Banks on NFL Street. An alternate, because I can only have 7. Those were the stipulations put out by Braden, or potentially the video game itself. It's been years since I played. An alternate at running back linebacker would have been Travis Henry. Boy, do I love Travis Henry in his Tennessee Titans days. One of my favorite Tennessee Titans. Give me Travis Henry as an alternate. I've got 3 offensive linemen, defensive linemen, because if memory serves me right, you have a center and 2 guards on offense. And then defensively, you have 3 down linemen. So these guys will play both offensive line, defensive line. John Henderson, Reggie White, and because I thought I needed at least one true offensive lineman in there, Juwan James. First-round pick back in 2013, 2014. Wide receiver DB, I have 2. And again, this is an impossible task, right? Impossible task. Oh, Eric Berry, because that's not that hard, right? Eric Berry and Dante Stallworth. I thought those 2 guys, versatility. Eric Berry can play running back, wide receiver, obviously, and know he can play defensive back, safety, and Dante Stallworth, wide receiver, and of course defensive back as well. So I think that's a pretty solid, good team. Now, you can make 4 or 5 different versions of this Tennessee Volunteers NFL Street theme video game, but tell me if you like mine. Joe Milton, the quarterback, with respect to Heath Shuler, maybe Brent Schaefer. Running back, linebacker, Jeremy Banks. An alternate would be Travis Henry. O-line, D-line, John Henderson, Reggie White, Juwan James, wide receiver, DB, Eric Berry, and Dante Stallworth. Braden, that was a whole lot of fun, dude. I obviously took up a lot of the time here, so I'm going to have to blow through and answer a lot of these other questions. Good stuff, Braden. Carla Jenkins, listen to the show every single day. I appreciate you. You've mentioned winning on the road. Which football game do you think would be easier for Tennessee to win, at Florida or at Alabama? It's going to be crazy because that win total is just at 6.5. I certainly think Florida is going to be better than that, but I think winning at Alabama is more attainable right now, okay? I haven't studied Alabama's roster. I will once we get into spring and all that, but Florida, number 1, is a house of horrors for Tennessee. Number 2, I think the quarterback's going to be much better than anything Alabama can throw out. Number 3, they got some weapons. If they can figure out the line of scrimmage, I think Florida's going to be much better than what people think this year. But anyway you want to spend it, Tennessee just doesn't win at Florida. So, and I understand Tennessee doesn't win at Alabama either, but I would say Florida right now. Plus, gosh, the stakes late in November, that game. Whew, that's going to be one. Braden also had bonus LeBron or MJ. That's MJ for sure. Tyler says, so with baseball underway, I've got a Twitter Tuesday question for you. Have you heard anything about the uniform situation with the team? We got told there's going to be redesigns and then the old jerseys get worn on game day. Curious what's going on there. They got some new sets in. They are not going to wear all the new sets. They're going to wear some. It's going to be a mixed match this year. On opening day Friday, they wore the new white jerseys. On Sunday, they wore the new cream design pants, the old cream top. I don't know, for whatever reason, the feel, the make, the look, I think they're going to wear some of the old ones this year. But some of those new ones will be in there as well, just like they were this past weekend on Sunday and on Friday. Tyler, appreciate you. Let's go to Rocky Top Tom. If you could choose one player from last year's football team to be eligible to come back and play one more season, who would it be? You can't pick Cooper Mays. He's the cheese choice. Everybody likes cheese. I get it. I'm picking Keenan Peely. That's from Rocky Top Tom. If I can't pick Cooper Mays, give me give me Dylan Sampson. Yeah, give me Dylan Sampson. James Pierce, I understand, is going to be the highest drafted Vol, but I think Joshua Josephs and Jordan Ross and Caleb Herring are more than capable of replacing that production. Yeah, give me Dylan Sampson. I mean, dude was a stud, and I like Tennessee's options in the backfield, don't get me wrong, but I mean, Dylan Sampson was the SEC Player of the Year. Let's go to Michael, and I think this is the last one I have. Yeah, let's go to Michael here. A basketball question. Is there a coach on staff that is the offensive coordinator or shooting coach? It seems like the offense has struggled for years, and shooters get worse, not better. Rick Barnes works on the mechanics of shooting the basketball all the time, always has. So to answer your question, it would be Rick Barnes. He's the head coach. He's the shooting coach. This is his offense. Now, we all know Rick Barnes' basketball teams emphasize defense. Defense first, defense first, defense first. And it always will. So naturally, you're going to be winded. You're going to be less effective, if you will, on the offensive end because you're asserting so much on the defensive end. But no, there's no specific offensive coordinator and or shooting coach. It's Rick Barnes. And there have been players who have improved mightily under Rick Barnes. Dalton Knecht's shooting percentage, 3-point shooting percentage, actually improved when he was here at Tennessee. Zakiya Ziegler has improved every single year shooting the basketball he's been at Tennessee. Jemai Mashak's a good reference to draw for. If you guys think that Jemai Mashak struggles to shoot the basketball now, I mean, at least he's knocking down shots and helping Tennessee win ball games at this point in time. Early in his career, I mean, that was just not an option. So it's Rick Barnes, and I think for the most part, if you want to see a key difference, unless you have a generational talent like a Dalton Knecht or like a Grant Williams, you just got to go recruit shooters. At the end of the day, you just got to go recruit shooters and some more offensive personnel. But to answer your question, no OC, no shooting coach. It's simply Rick Barnes. All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Great questions for the Mailbag Show and really interesting topic. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Would love to hear your feedback. What do you think about this? Should it stay at 12? Is it going to go to 14 or 16 in 2026? Should the SEC Big Ten be allowed to have 4 AQs? Would you love to see a play-in game instead of an SEC championship game? I sure would. All that and more. Would love to hear from you at _Cainer and at Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys as always. Everydayers, couldn't do the show without you. We'll do it again tomorrow. Same time, same place. This is Locked On Vols.